in doing that, you'll notice that not only will you feel the ball better, but it'll be a lot easier to put more balls on the table. We're also going to talk about our stance. Many people like to play backhand, say, like this or like this, but there's a correct stance where you're stable and you're always in position. And that would be feet more or less parallel to the table. You want to be a little less than a meter from the table when playing regularly here. And you want to really bend your knee so that your knee comes to your toe. When you do that, you're always ready, not only for your backhand, but if the ball changes to your forehand, it's easy to transition. So that's something you have to keep in mind. Now to talk about just the basics of the hand. A lot of people play backhand with their elbow like this. They're just eager to touch the ball. But you have to really pay attention to how your hand's moving. You have to pay attention so that the tip of your racket is always above your elbow, number one. This is really important. Doing that, make sure that you're always putting spin on the ball and not pushing it. And that's something a lot of people have troubles with, but if you keep at it, everyone can get it. Then you just want to open and close the door. Well, that's what I describe it as, which means you just want to bend and unbend your elbow, forward and backwards, forward and backwards. And that's the basics of how to do a backhand. If anyone wants to join me at the table, just so that they see what that looks like in motion. Anyone want to come on up? Sure. Give her a round of applause. Now what she's doing isn't that terrible. However, there are a few there are a few things to note, however. You'll notice that her legs could probably be a little wider so that she's more stable. When she's playing, her thumb, you should have your thumb a little bit on your rubber for that stability. And open and close, open and close, open and close. That's just the real basic of playing backhand to backhand. So we can try that one more time. It takes practice, but that's the general idea of how to play a basic backhand to backhand. Thank you. Now, it's easier to do that. It should be easier to do that in the practice more and more as you go along with it, but how do you apply that in the game? Well, let's say the other person attacks and the ball comes back to you faster. You have to have your hand ready here in front of you, which means you can't be going back, you can't be going this much back. Should be here, and from here you're going to be going forward. Now, it's hard to keep in mind, but you have to and able to perform what I'm telling you. We're also going to talk about the backhand spin. Now, this is a much tougher shot, but it's imperative to be able to play at a higher level. And the reason why I was talking about the basics of the backhand just now is because in order to do that backhand spin, we must be able to perform those basics. Now, what's the difference between a backhand spin and a backhand normal shot? Apart from the hand and a bit of adjustment with legs, not much, which is why it's important to be able to do these basics before you can move on to the spin. Now, what the spin is you move back a little more so that you give the ball time to bounce up and down. The timing is also different. When you're playing close here, we're waiting for the ball at the top of the bounce and then hitting it. Top of the bounce, then hitting it, and you develop that rhythm. When we start to do that backhand spin, you move back from the table a little, giving the ball time to bounce, reach its peak, and then drop a little. By doing that, you slow the ball down, give yourself some time to react, and give yourself enough time to be able to put energy onto the ball, which is what the ultimate goal of this shot is. This shot was more control, putting it back on the table. This shot is giving power, trying to win the point. So what you'll do here is you're going to have your legs wide again, your knees bent to where your toes are. Now what's going to change here is how I told you your hand stays up here. Now your hand's going to drop a little. Doing that, you're also going to drop your elbow, and you're going to turn your waist. So it's one coordinated motion like that, and now you have your your shoulders, facing the opponent. In doing that, you'll notice how much energy I built up with my body, and you kind of let it all go into one place. Now it's a lot harder than how I just mentioned it, but that's the general idea. You build up all this energy, you let it go into the ball. And now why is that important? People doing that with forehand do it all the time, and not many people have problems with it. Coming to the backhand is where people tend to find difficulties. People want to go strong with their forehand and then come back and block with their backhand. But you're eliminating half your game if you do that. So you'll go strong with your forehand, you'll come back, you're going to block with your backhand. No. You want to come back, you want to give yourself the time, and you want to unload on the ball. Doing that, you have two sides of the game. The opponent feels more pressure. Now, with all that being said, there are a few things to keep in mind. Your wrist for this shot, here it was pretty stiff. Now, you never want to play too stiff, but it's a much stiffer shot than what I'm describing right now. Your wrist is staying in one place, you're going back and forth. With this backhand topspin shot, now your wrist becomes a lot more loose, as every time you're hitting the ball at contact, you give a bit extra with it. Doing that, the opponent always feels more pressure, the ball kicks to them, they don't know what to do. And that's the goal. Does anyone want to come and see how that is demonstrated in practice? Ricky? Go. Do you mind just going there for a second, just because I need a bit more room? Thanks. Now, here, I'll play a normal backhand shot just to... You'll notice that I'm just doing that. Now, notice the spin, the difference when I do backhand spin. You notice, in fact, I'm not just a bit farther, I'm quite a bit farther. Really giving myself time for the ball to bounce down, load, and then turn again. And that's the general idea. Now this shot is much tougher to perform than this right here. And it takes much more practice. Thanks, Ricky. So, with all that being said, what are the similarities between these two shots? Well, your feet are more or less the same. The way you begin the shot with your stability, your center of gravity, has to remain the same. And in fact, it's not just for your backhand, it's for all of table tennis. Your knees have to be bent where your toes are. Your center of gravity, your chest should be leaned a bit forward. In doing that, you'll find it's a lot easier to move back and forth. And that's how you're going to set up for your shot. Your hand, while going down for backhand topspin and staying up for the normal shot, you're always turning your body a little. You're always looking for energy from the waist. While you will give energy with your hand, everything that's done in table tennis comes from the lower body. If you have a good foundation and a strong base, everything builds up on its own. If you're only going with your hand, you'll find that it's much harder to compensate for that with your legs. And now let me show you what I mean. Let's say I'm playing like this, I'm just using my hand. While it might look okay, I might even put the ball on the table consistently, when I start playing the game, the ball is not going to come consistently as it does in practice, one place, one spin. And I'm going to find it very, very, very hard to adjust. However, if I have my base now, my legs, my foundation, if the ball comes here or here, I'm ready right away. I can turn and unload on the ball. It becomes much easier doing that. Another point to make in backhand is, we were only talking about what happens if the ball comes long. What if the ball comes a bit shorter? Say, here. What will we do then? Now, in the middle of the point, this doesn't happen so often, but on serve receive, this becomes crucial. And what we'll be doing now is talking about the flip, which is if the ball comes short here, how can we lift it up with a mini topspin, which is a smaller version of this shot we were talking about here. To start with that, we're going to talk about the correct stance for serve receive, which is crucial in order to perform this shot. So what you do here is you look at this edge of the table towards your backhand, and you want to line it up with the inner part of your left thigh. You have the inner part of your left thigh here. You put your right leg back so you're always ready. You bend your knees, and you put your racket up here. And now you're waiting for the serve. Now you're ready. Whatever he does, you're able to move because you have that base. Your body's bent forward. You're good. Now let's say he serves short here. And instead of just pushing it back and producing a lower quality shot, I want to put some pressure on it. What am I going to do? There's a few steps in that. I'm waiting here. Your right leg always goes forward when you're going for a short ball. Your left leg should never go forward unless the ball is coming out here to the side. Anywhere from here all the way there, it's your right leg that's going to be moving in. Keep that in mind. A lot of people confuse it, and that also takes time to, it takes time to break that habit too, but it's important. So you do that, you move in. Now, notice my legs are still bent. In fact, they're bent even more. Now my knee is not only at my toes, it's beyond my toes. I really want to be here as low as possible. Doing that, I can see the spin of the ball. Because when you're doing this shot, it's a lot more delicate than what I was just describing. You have to really pay attention to how much do I need to use my wrist, how much do I need to brush the ball. Because if he serves topspin, I'm waiting here and I don't pay attention. Let's say I'm just like this. I'm not going to notice the spin of the ball. I'm going to lift it out, easy point for him. Or likewise, let's say he serves a really downspin ball, and I'm waiting here, and I think, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to put it into the net without even realizing it. However, if I'm here, and I bend down low, now I can really notice the spin of the ball. I can see if it spins left, right, down, up. Doing that, I can judge it a lot better. Does it come up? I can go like that, no problem. Is it a really downspin ball? I can lift it up, no problem. Is it side spin? I don't have a problem adjusting here. Is it the other spin? Same thing, no problem. But in order to do that, your head has to be as low to the ball as possible. If you don't do that, like I said, it's just going to be really hard to judge the ball. And you're going to make a lot of errors that you just don't have to be making. Now, the actual shot itself, you're going to come here. And now, while I was saying for these two shots, you shouldn't bring your arm back like this, we're going to kind of break that rule here and do exactly that. You have to bring your elbow in front of your racket in this case. And doing that, we know we have to do that because we're on such a short distance here. At such a short distance, there's no time, there's no energy. We can't really use our body that much anymore. We can a little, and we will, but we can't use that as much as we do over here. So we're going to go here. We're going to bring our elbow back. We're going to be low to the table so we can judge our ball. And now here, it's almost exclusively wrist and just a bit of forearm, and that's all it is. And you're going to flick forward. And the thumb is particularly important here. The thumb is what's going to drive everything. Back here, the thumb is also important. You need it, but you have your body to support it too. Here, you still have a bit of body, but it's almost all your arm, which is why we're bringing it back. Your thumb is right there, ready to apply pressure to the rubber, and flick, flick, flick. And when you're flicking, keep in mind, you're not flicking till here and then going like that. That's pushing the ball. Again, you're not sure what's going to happen with it. It could go in the net, it could go outside. When you really flick, you want to make sure you get that full range of motion in your wrist. You're going all the way. So you're bringing it back, not 100%, but a good way back, and then you're flicking it 100% all the way, as much as you can. Doing that, not only do you ensure that the ball comes with spin, but you're making sure that you don't make as many mistakes. Because it's something I've noticed with lower level players, they have a lot of problems dealing with spin, whether it comes to when the spin comes back to them or putting spin on the ball. Putting spin on the ball, a lot of lower level players like to just push the ball, and it just becomes this slow rally. And it's not bad, but it can be a lot better. And then particularly when the spin comes to them. Let's say someone does this to you, and the ball comes back here. The ball isn't going to come slowly without any spin, so you can just put it back. Now you have to be ready, which is why we do this, which is why we do this, which is why we come back here and do that, and quite frankly, why we use this basic shot right here not so often. So doing this, we're low here, eyes to the, you flick that. Now you're ready here. And that brings us into our fourth shot, the counter, which is a mix between what we just did here and this topspin from back here. Now, why do we use the counter? Why do we use the counter is so that we can avoid blocking, that slow rally that gives the other opponent a lot of time to react. Let's say someone turns around at their forehand and tries to kill. And now you're waiting here and you don't know what to do. Well, you don't just have to put the ball back. You'll bend your knees, you're waiting. You're going to let the ball bounce at the top of its, right before its peak. Here I didn't mention at what point we hit the ball here. Here we hit the ball at the top of the bounce at the peak, because we're on a short distance here. You want to lift the ball as much as possible. Here, the normal shot, we hit it at its peak. Back here, we hit it after its peak. This counter shot that I'm talking about right now, you hit it before the peak. Not right off the bounce. You want to wait for it a bit. But if you let it reach the top of its bounce, it's going to jump up way too much, and you're going to find this shot quite difficult to do. However, if we wait for it, let's say the ball's coming, it bounces here. Let's say the top of the bounce is here. You're going to let it bounce, and you're going to let it come here, and then you're going to hit it. If I had to say a height, which is what my coach used to tell me, it would be about a net and a half to 2 nets. Now, that's a lot easier than it sounds. No, it sounds a lot easier than it is, sorry. But if you can keep that height in mind when doing this counter shot, you'll find that it's a lot easier, and in fact, it's one of the keys to it. So back to the actual technique of it. We're here. The ball comes just before the peak of the bounce. And now what I'm going to do is really use my legs for this one. The hand isn't moving so much. We're putting it here, and I'm going to go up and down. And while I'm going up and down with my legs, and forward for that matter, kind of have to push it all in one way, and that can be quite tough. All I'm doing with my hand here is just driving the head of the racket forward. Just that. That's all it is. This might be one of the more basic shots. As much as it is a mix of these two, which are not easy to perform, this one is relatively easy. This is topspin. Backspin, we'll talk about later, but this is, let's say you give your opponent the ball in the middle, and he tries to kill you. And now, you can decide to block the ball back. However, you're going to give another easy ball, and he might finish the point. If he's killing, and you're ready for this, the ball bounces right before the peak, and then you go on top of it, you're going to give him the ball faster than he gave it to you. Now, why is that? Because you're using his spin and his energy. And a lot of top table tennis players do this. Everyone thinks that you have to power the ball, you have to kill everything. No. It's a lot better and smarter to play it in an advantageous position. He starts the attack, and then you're waiting here to use his energy. Because if you notice this shot, I'm not using my arm a whole lot. I'm not loading up and then unloading. All I'm doing is that's because I'm using his energy. And you'll find that not only is this easier to do, but if you try and, let's say he starts to attack and you try and come back and do this topspin shot, you're going to find that this is almost impossible. Players my level, top 50 players in the world don't do that. Everyone stays here, at least for that first shot. They stay here and counter it back. What that does is that puts them in a better position, and that other opponent is now going to be putting the ball back in a way you want it, and at that point you can turn around with your forehand, you can perform this backhand shot and try and kill it and win the point. So, back to this one more time. All it is. And in this case, now we're going to be focusing on how our legs move too. Here I told you, regular backhand shot. I didn't talk too much about how our legs move. Now I'm going to really discuss it a little more in depth. You'll hit the ball, and in between every shot, your legs have to jump up and down a little. You can't stay in one place. Staying in one place means that if the ball comes here or here, you won't know what to do and you'll get stuck. if you play this shot, you bounce, bounce, bounce. Whether the ball comes here, 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 anywhere on the table, now you're going to be ready. If you're just staying here and you're just doing this, if the ball comes just a little more to the left, to the right, or the left, you're not going to know what happened. You're going to be stuck. You're going to be playing it like this, and then you're lowering your chances of winning the point. Staying in constant motion is the key to being able to perform all these shots. And especially this one where you're a bit closer to the table, the ball's coming a bit faster towards you. You have to be ready for that. If the ball comes here, I can bounce right there. If my legs are like this, I'm just playing, I'm doing well with my hand, I'm going up and down with my legs, but I'm not bouncing up all the time, this shot's going to be almost impossible to catch. Now that we've talked about what would happen if the opponent attacked it and you want to counter topspin it, likewise, what happens if your opponent chops the ball long and now the ball comes downspin? If the ball comes downspin, we come back to this backhand topspin shot in a modified version. You're going to come here, the ball's going to bounce, it's going to come down, you're going to wait for that ball to lose spin. Anytime you see the opponent give a really, really, really strange shot, my one tip of advice, no matter what it is, how spinny, how strong, anything, is wait for the ball to bounce. A lot of people like to take a ball really early. Let's say someone does, and the ball's turning in all sorts of ways, and everyone gets all panicked. Oh, what do I do? Wait for the ball. Especially with these newer balls, they tend to bounce slower and lose their spin a lot faster. If someone gives you a weird shot, let's say it's going like this, and it turns to the left, it'll turn to the left, but it's not going to continue that curve. Now the ball is just going straight. It turned left and now it's going straight. So you can wait for the ball here. Now you know where it is because you waited for the ball, you judged it, and you're ready. Now, let's say that same ball comes and you want to hit it right away because you don't know what's happening with it. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how much spin's on the ball. You don't know whether you can control that spin. But if you wait for it, as with any other shot, I'm not just talking about backhand, I'm talking about forehand, I'm talking about your forehand short, your flip, everything. If you wait for it, it's a lot easier to put the ball back on the table. Not only will you put it back on the table, you'll do it with a better quality, better spin, everything. So now back to this backhand topspin shot on downspin. Your opponent gives it to you like that. Now the ball is coming with downspin, which means that if I try and just do this normal shot, it's going to go into the net. If I try and do this topspin shot, it's going to go in the net. So what am I going to do? I could push it back. However, if the ball comes long and you can't attack it, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be looking at ways to start the attack so that you begin the point with an advantage. So the ball is going to come backhand topspin here. Now what's going to happen is we're going to lower even more with our legs. Our body stays the same, but our legs have to be bent more. Legs are the most important part of this shot, as they are with most. Now we're going to drop our hand completely. Before it was here. For this shot, it was here. For backhand topspin on a regular topspin ball, we put it somewhere here. We're letting it go all the way down now. And now why is that? Because we have to lift up the ball because of all the downspin on the ball. If I put it here, if the ball is just a little downspin, it might work, but if someone really chops it heavy to you, there's no chance you'll be able to lift it with the hand just here. You have to really drop your hand, drop your elbow, drop your shoulder in between both your legs. Now notice how I'm also twisting my legs here. Again, these are one of the shots where you're going to unload on it, but not with so much power as it will with spin. And I'll explain what that means in just a second. You're going to be turning, and as you go up, you're turning everything else with you. But in this case, you're using a lot more forearm than you were before. And what that does is, you'll notice that you don't hear it's a really fine brush. And what that does is that lets you bring up any ball, no matter how spinny, how side spin, doesn't matter. That lets you bring up the ball. Now what that does towards the opponent is he's waiting for a lower quality shot because he thinks that, oh, he pushed it really well, you're not going to know what to do. When you're giving this topspin, the ball is not coming back super fast to him. However, it is coming spinny. And spin can be just as tough to deal with as power and speed. If you manage to perform this shot, say, low and how I just described it, that ball's going to come to him, and he's not going to have anything to do other than put the ball back like that. He's only going to be able to lift it up for you to finish the point. And the goal of this shot is not so much to win the point as it was with the regular topspin shot. The goal with this shot is to start off the point. Because seldom will you see someone pushing long like that in the middle of the point. It's usually on their serve receive. You just served, and now they push long, and you have to start the point. What are you going to do? You're not going to push back long. We already discussed that. If the ball comes long, you try and initiate the attack. Put yourself in a position. So what you're going to do is you're going to lift it up with a lot of spin. And particularly if this person isn't a super high level, putting any amount of spin on the ball is going to make him uncomfortable. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Table Tennis Canada ratings, but anything under 2,500, if you put spin on the ball, they're not going to know what to do. They're going to have quite a bit of problems with that spin. So if you can pull that off, and while I mentioned that the ball does have to come low to the net, if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can start off with putting it higher. Now, you don't have to balloon it up in the air, but instead of that, you can do that. That subtle difference, especially when playing a game, even if you do feel comfortable with putting the low ball, if you're changing up that low trajectory with that high trajectory, you're always going to keep your opponent guessing. So now, is my opponent going to give it to me low? Is he going to give it to me high? Your opponent doesn't know, and you're in an advantage. Now, this shot is quite tough, so I'm going to recommend a few exercises as to what you can do after this session, a week from now. Doesn't matter, it's up to you. What a lot of people do is they let the ball roll off. Now, this is even tough for me. And you have to try and topspin that. Doing that, you'll get the feeling for how that brush feels, that fine brush, that where you barely hear the ball when you're touching it. That's one exercise. Another exercise is if you have a partner, it's just as simple as serving, pushing it there, and just repeating this motion as many times as possible. Now, I don't know if I was unclear with this, but does anyone have any questions? Because this is a bit of a tougher shot.
So in that last one, how low do you want the ball to be when you're making contact? Or what's the threshold of spot work?
Here, are we talking about when I'm hitting the ball here?
Yeah.
You want the ball to, as I mentioned before, when the ball comes really with a lot of spin, a lot of speed, a lot of power, you might want the ball to drop down a little, wait for it. And that's what I would recommend in this case. If you try and hit the ball on its way up, there's way too much spin for that. If you wait the ball to come down, the ball has lost its spin, you've got it into position, it's a lot easier. So I would say a bit after its peak. A bit after its peak when it's lost some rotation, it's the easiest to unwind on it.
So between your hip and your knee?
Between your hip and your knee. Now that all depends. Because let's say he gives you a ball like that. But I'm giving an example of that height. Something of that height, but with downspin, can still be really tough to hit. In fact, people think just because the ball is high, it's easy to smack. That's not true. The opponent can give it to you in all sorts of ways where you're still lost and you have no clue what to do. So to that question, between your knee and your waist, if the ball comes at a relatively normal height, I'd say here, it would be right at your waist. No, your hand would start where your knees are, but you would hit it where your waist is. Now, however, let's say the ball's higher. You have to adjust for that, because while I did mention that you start like this every time, if the ball's higher, you're not going to put your hand all the way here. You have to judge that. If the ball's higher, I might bend my knees a little less, and I might start from here instead. Now, instead of starting from where my knees are, and it's a subtle difference. We're only talking a couple of centimeters, but those centimeters do make a difference. We'll start at here, right where my waist is. And from there, we'll hit the ball, if it's higher. Now, it doesn't come that often in the game, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. what I would focus on for all of you is this shot right here where you're starting at your knees, hitting it at your waist level. Now, while I say hitting it at your waist level, you don't want to hit it behind here, close to your waist. You're trying to hit it in front of you as possible. Doing that for any shot, for that matter. You don't want to hit it close to your body. You don't want the ball hitting you. That's what my dad used to tell me. You don't want the ball hitting you. You want to hit the ball. You want to give that energy, and you don't want to get caught here and then you're late. You're always looking to hit the ball at least 2 feet in front of you for any shot. And that applies not only to backhand, but forehand too. That's a good distance, right there. Any other questions just on this shot? Move on to the next. All right. So now, what happens if the ball comes high in this region? We'll start off with a topspin high ball, something like this. And you found yourself in a position where you really should be going with your forehand, but you're late, so you can't. What are you going to do? Now, people think you can just smack the ball like that, but it's not that simple. Yes, you can smack the ball. However, you're putting yourself at a risk for making an easy mistake, giving the ball in a way where the opponent can really take advantage of you. So if the ball comes here high, what you're going to do is you're going to place your racket wherever the ball is. If the ball is here, your racket comes up here. If the ball is down here, which is still considered a high ball, you're going to lower your racket. Now what that does is you're ready for the ball. Here we're not trying to kill the ball either. People think just because it's high, like I mentioned, you can kill it. No. Here, and now you have to really scan where the opponent is. Because this shot isn't so much about the technique. What you do with the ball, if you can do these other skills, you'll get this. This is similar to that counter I was talking to you about here, except a raised version of it. Now what you're going to do here is you're going to really scan the opponent. Where is he? If you notice that he's there, it might be better for you to give him all the way to his forehand. If you notice he's in the middle, and this is a word of advice for everyone in any situation, push it to their right hip. If they're a lefty, push it to their left hip. If I push it to their right hip, they're stuck here. What do? That's what they do. If they're a lefty, same thing. It comes here, and not to say that people don't move, but if, let's say you play the ball here where they're comfortable, and then you play just a little to the left, a lot of people don't notice that. And they're going to play that shot, they're going to have the next shot coming to them thinking, same shot, I'm ready. But no, in fact, it has moved, and you must too. And because most people don't, they get stuck, which is what the goal of this shot is. Trying to get them stuck or trying to get them out of position. If you notice that they're in either two corners, say I'm the opponent now, and I hit my shot and now I'm waiting here. Well, what you want to do now is, the ball is up here, you're scanning your opponent, you notice he's there. You're just going to push it to the opposite side. Not fast, not hard. You don't even have to give a lot of spin to it. You still want to give spin to ensure that you're not making mistakes, but it's not the primary goal here. The primary goal is you've realized that your opponent is all the way on the other side. You give it to the opposite side. Likewise, he's over here. Now my opponent's waiting here. Well, what am I going to do? I'm just going to wait for the ball here. I'm going to try and give it to the backhand as much as possible. Now, not to say he won't return the shot, but what will happen is he will be out of position. So if he plays a shot, it's going to be like this. If it's the opposite scenario, he's going to play it like this, and he's going to give you a bad shot, and you'll be ready to finish that. One thing to note is, I don't know if most of you guys are more comfortable with your forehand or your backhand, but when people tend to finish the point, they tend to search for their forehand. Not to say, now I'm not going to describe the inner workings of the forehand, everything right now, but if you give a good shot with your backhand and the ball comes even here on your backhand side, if it comes really high and really slow, well, I do mention the shot if you're out of position. The number one thing you want to do is turn it on with your forehand and finish it. Why? The way the body turns and everything with your forehand, you can always give more energy with it. It's a more powerful shot. then this. Now, that being said, we don't always have time, which is why we look at this shot. So I talked about what happens if he's to your backhand, you give it to the forehand. If he's on the forehand side, you give it to the backhand. If they're in the middle, where if you give it to their forehand or their backhand, they're ready, and they don't even have to move for that matter, which is why it's really important to scan where he is. Not only where he is, where his racket is too. And this is tough. In fact, almost no one gets it on the first couple of tries. It actually takes quite a bit of time to be able to develop that reaction, because it's not the game moves too fast for you to be able to actually realize, okay, well, he's on the forehand side, I have to give it to his backhand, so because of that, now I'm going to lift up my hand and go there. That's all one thing. Oh, he's there, 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 there. That's all it is. Now back to if he's in the middle, push him in the middle. What are you going to do? You're going to give it there. Now, with that being said, you can do the same thing even if he's on the backhand side. I recommend going to the forehand just because leg movement, particularly at a lower level, it's slow enough where if you give it to them there, they won't know what to do. However, you can always push them here, no matter where they are. If they're on their forehand side and you give it to them here, they'll be out of position. If they're all the way on their backhand side and you decide to give it to them here where they're also caught up, that's also okay. The only reason I'm saying that's the only option for when we're in the middle is because you can give it anywhere else on the table and they're ready. So when they're waiting in the middle here, your only real option is this, unless you want to give him a chance to potentially win the point, which is something we'll get to in actually a little bit. It's possible to give him a scenario where he thinks he's in an advantage. He gives you all the power and spin in the world, but in fact, you're still an advantage in the point, but we'll get to that in just a second. So we're here, and it's important to note that although most people like to wait in the middle, you have to scan the tendencies of your opponent. Many people, even such as myself, I play more towards the backhand side because I try and use my forehand as much as possible. If you notice that, give it to their forehand. Keep giving it to their forehand. Abuse that. And you'll notice that they'll start switching more towards the forehand side. With that, you bring it back to their backhand with the shot that we were talking about. And now you really have your opponent on his feet guessing, not knowing what to do. Now, how can you practice this shot? Because you can't really practice it with someone else, someone constantly lobbing you and then you trying to put it in a position where they're not. What you can do is you can find a partner, take a few balls, 4 or 5 balls, doesn't matter. And what you're going to do is you're going to have someone just keep giving it to you like that. And then what you want that someone that's throwing the ball to do is move to one side of the table. Let's say I'm the one that's giving the ball and then the other person. Does someone want to come up and demonstrate with me? Because I feel as if it would be better if all you guys could see this with someone. That's fine? Here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the ball like that. You're going to do that shot. That shot. This is what we were just talking about. If the ball comes high to your backhand. And now I'm going to move to either here right after I give you that ball, or I'm going to move here. What you're trying to do is you're trying to give it to where I'm not. Just so that all of you can see what this looks like. No. In this case, it would go there. Now, likewise, let's say I move to my forehand. And that's the exercise. That teaches you not only to use your hand, but it trains you to look at the opponent, scan what's going on, and make a quick decision. That's going to help you not only with this backhand, but your entire game. Thanks, Ricky. With all that being said, next shot. Let's say the ball comes really low and just bounces out of the table. And this is often the hardest shot and most danger of being able to wreck your racket, in all honesty. Because the ball hits somewhere here. It bounces, it's gone. You maybe waited a little too long, so it's really left its peak. It managed to leave outside the table where you can do a topspin. But now what do? You can't be doing the same motions as before. If you do the same motions as before, what ends up happening is in the net right away. This is assuming the ball is a downspin ball. We'll talk about the topspin scenario in just a second. If it's a downspin ball, now you really have to analyze it. If it's coming out here, it might be better just push it back. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the push or not, but it's a pretty basic shot. In fact, it's one of the shots that most people learn at the beginning. Quite simple. You line up your hand. Your racket is parallel with the table. The handle should be parallel with the edge of the table. And you just push the ball forward. That's all it is. So let's say someone does that. The ball comes out here, and you're over here. And you really can't lift up the ball. Don't take the chances. Push it back. Wait for the next one. However, let's say the ball is still in this general area, but it's come out a little more. Not enough where you can still do that normal the backhand topspin on a downspin shot, but enough where you can still do something with it where you don't have to push. What's going to happen here is you're not going to lower your racket all the way. You're going to leave it somewhere here. It's still going to be lower than your elbow. How we discussed normal shots here, more backhand topspins are down here. It's still going to be lower than your elbow, but you're not dropping it all the way down to your knees. You can't do that. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough space here. You're going to hit the table if you try, which is why I'm saying that this is one of the more risky shots. It's going to come here, and all you're going to try and do is, with your wrist and with your forearm, go straight up. I'll show you once more. That's all it is. Here, you're not even trying to gain the advantage because the opponent has done a good enough shot where he's taking the advantage from you. All you're trying to do is not make it worse for yourself. And how do you do that? With this. You bring it up and down. You're just lifting up the ball just so that the ball comes low. The ball has to come low. How I was mentioning before that with some backhand topspin shots on downspin, particularly when we're back here, you can give it with a high trajectory or low trajectory to keep them guessing. In this case, you don't really have that luxury of choice. You have to give it low as you can. Giving it as low as you can, you haven't put yourself in a big position to win the point, but you haven't done anything to make the situation worse for yourself. Now, that's for the downspin case. If it comes topspin, what do you do? Again, let's say the ball comes with topspin, and it comes here. All we're going to do is we're going to let it drop even lower. And that was way too high, but that's what you're going for. You're just trying to put it back. The angle of your racket's going to be a lot more open than for these other shots. For these other shots, your racket is usually here. This might be good. If this is straight, for most of the shots, it's going to be like that. For this shot, you're going to turn it the other way. So while most shots are like this, with this shot, it has to be open. Kind of as if you're doing this push shot we were talking about just a second ago. And you're just trying to put it back like that. Because again, the opponent has done enough where you can't really do anything to win the point on one shot. So you have to set it up for yourself. Sorry, it's dry. So you do that. That's for the case where if you really don't have any space here, and this is more of a desperation shot than anything else. It's not going to come up often, but you'll still encounter it, and you have to be ready for that. Now, what happens if the ball comes out a little more, where you have a...
Sorry, just before you get into that next shot demonstration, I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions so far about any of the shots.
If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to raise your hand, interrupt me, anything.
Thanks.
When you do a high lock, when you start hitting the ball down to like waist level, when you hit the ball, level be high.
Which shot are we talking about here? The
High up, like a lob shot.
a lob shot.
So hit it really high. Where did you hit it though? When it dropped
If
down.
the ball's coming high, if you're getting the ball high towards you, you're gonna want to try and hit it. All depending. If it's really a high shot like that, you're going to try and hit it where your head is. because you can't hit it at the top of the bounce. You're not going to wait for it all the way down here either. You're going to try and hit it where your head is. That's where most people find it the most comfortable. And at that point, you're trying to win the point. Now, we can't hit it at the top of the bounce. That's going to be too high for us. If we wait for it low, we've lost all the initiative. You let the ball bounce up to here, backhand or forehand. Forehand generally more so than backhand. More people feel comfortable with that. At your head height. And remember that, although we're talking about forehand here, but when we're talking about backhand, but in this situation, forehand, your pointer is really important. Your pointer is what's going to let you close the ball. Because while some people might give you a normal lob, some people might give you a lob with a lot of spin. If you do that just pushing it down from your head, the ball's going to go outside. There's too much spin. If you use this finger, however, you're going to make sure that you close the ball. And doing that, you're going to make sure it doesn't go in the net, it doesn't go outside, it comes right on the table where you want it to be.
Good question. Thank you, Lance.
Anyone else? Anything? Go ahead.
Tell me, when you hit the ball there, you hit it in the middle or the top part? When you brush the ball, is it in the middle? You hit it going this way?
On the racket, you mean?
Yeah, on the racket. Yes, on the racket.
That's a good question, actually. And it's a point I forgot to bring up, so thank you for reminding me. For the forehand, at least, if you're hitting it high, you're going to want to hit it more towards the end of the racket here. You can draw kind of 4 quadrants on your racket. Divide it horizontally and vertically. You're going to want to try and hit it so that all of you can see right there. Right at the tip, right in the middle of the top part. Now, that's for this high ball. Just because at the end of your racket, there's always more energy. And I'll talk about that a little more, but it's the tip of your racket. If you hit it with this part here, there's not that much energy. It's better for control, but on a high ball like this, you're really just trying to finish the point. Same thing with backhand. You're trying to always hit it towards the end here. That way, there's more contact on the racket when you are going. There's going to be more spin, more speed, more power. However, these are for the high balls. Let's say the ball comes low, or with downspin, or with side spin. Then what do you do? At that point, instead of the top here, we're going to shift down here. This is for forehand I'm talking. Here. The lower, how can I say this? For you guys, that would be the lower left quadrant. But when you divide your racket into 4, the lower right quadrant is what it is. And this area has the most energy for any shot coming low. There's the most contact on your racket. It's a lot easier to hold the ball a little longer. You'll have a lot more control, but at the same time, you have more spin, more energy. Now with backhand, it's the opposite. We're trying to hit it here. So that, with that same goal in mind, we try and keep the ball in the racket as long as possible. Now, a lot of people think that the ball just hits the racket and it goes away. That's not the case. The ball does stick to your racket. It doesn't stick to your racket, but it stays on your racket. And you want to maximize that time of contact. The longer that time of contact, the more spin comes, the more speed, the more energy. The harder it is for the opponent to bring it back. Which is why actually, and thank you for bringing up this question, it's really important to watch out where you're hitting the ball on your racket. Not only for winning the point, but let's say you're practicing with someone and you're trying to put as many balls on the table as possible, as everyone wants to do. If the ball is hitting all over the place, the ball is always going to be coming in an inconsistent way. Like that, like that. It's going to be coming all sorts of ways, and both of you guys are going to find that it's quite tough to produce a consistent rally. However, if each one is paying attention to the ball hitting where it's supposed to be for its respective shot, if you don't want to or can't, whatever the reason may be, hit it here for these low shots and then think about hitting it there in the middle for the high shots. And I can even talk to you about the flip, how it's supposed to hit here so that you can lift it up as much as possible. What you can do is just, as a general rule of thumb, not hit it straight in the middle, the upper part. Upper middle, you'll generally get by pretty well. Even if you're doing a shot where you should be hitting it lower here, if it's just a bit up, it's fine. And if you do that for every shot, you'll notice okay. So now if you and your partner are practicing and you're paying attention to the ball hitting there, what you're going to notice is that each ball is coming a lot nicer to one another. And when that ball comes a lot nicer to one another, now you can get into other things. Now we can start to go back into our backhand topspin. Then we can even start exercises. One backhand topspin here, one backhand topspin there. But all that starts from, and again, thank you for mentioning this question. Not sure how I forgot. You have to watch out where that ball hits on the racket. That is imperative. Not only in the game, but during practice too. So now, back to, any other questions or?
Just in terms of, most of my game is backhand.
Most of your game is backhand?
Yeah, because, playing hockey,
Yeah.
this way. So my backhand is stronger than my forehand. And so I rarely use the forehand. How do you try to switch over to use, I'm moving over to do this. How do you get your body ready to use more?
Now, that would have to start from the base. That's the most important part. With your backhand here, now, I played hockey maybe when I was 5, but I didn't play much. I didn't have the chance. With backhand, generally your stance is like this. So it's a lot easier for you to turn like this. With forehand, not the case. If you keep your legs the same for your forehand as you do your backhand, you're going to notice that it's almost impossible to turn and everything's coming awkwardly. What you have to do so that you can start to get used to using more forehand is, instead of keeping your legs parallel as you would for backhand, your right leg goes back. Now, don't do it too extreme, because that's also a problem. Then you have problems getting back to your backhand. But you do want to maybe make it you do want at least a half a foot separation between your left leg and your right leg in terms of where they are in relation to the table. Doing that, now, if you still want, you can play backhand with this configuration of legs too. But what it does is now it makes your forehand a lot easier to use. Now it's a lot easier to rotate, a lot easier to use your waist. And not only that, even if you don't use any of your body, it's a lot easier just for your hand. The way the human body is built, if we play like this, it's really awkward and it's not going far. If we put our leg just a little back, and this applies to everyone, if you feel kind of awkward with your forehand, bring your right leg a little back. Now what you've done is you've opened up a bunch of room for your hand. So even if you only use your hand, you've opened up so much room that it feels a lot more natural. Now, I haven't seen really how you play, so I can't comment on the hand or anything, but if there's one thing I would say to really focus on, it would be this right leg. Doing that, no matter what you do with the hand now, you've opened up a bunch of room. It's going to feel better than what it did before. Anything else, or? No? All right. Well, okay.
So the backhand for the pen holder, how do you?
The backhand for the pen holder.
Good question.
That's a good question actually. And if any of you else play Penhold, how we said we were using both our fingers here for backhand and forehand for that matter. With pen holder, it's the same 2 fingers, except now they're here. And honestly, how do you play Penhold like this, or do you use the backside too? Blocking like this? This side?
But I'm
Trying to learn this?
Yeah,
Okay.
First backhand type.
It's pretty similar to the shake hand shot. Your legs are the same, your body's the same, you're turning the same. The only thing that's happening is, with pen holder, you're kind of bringing your wrist back like this now. Whereas when we were going here, we just kind of let it go. With pen holder, you really want to bring your wrist back a little. Not a lot, or else you're going to really lose control of the shot. but you want to bring it back a little. So now it's kind of as if this head is facing towards me, the handle's facing there, and then you let it go. And you have to flick your wrist a little more with the Penhold because you have that liberty. Shakehanders, they don't have so much. They have mobility in the wrist, but that's where penholders at an advantage. They have a lot more movement here. Not only for your backhand, for your serve, for your forehand, everything. You bring it back. You're still focusing on this here. You're still trying to bring this here. But now at the end, as shakehanders would go a little like this, you have to make it a little more. You have to. And doing that, you are at an advantage. You can give more spin than a shakehander. It can be maybe a bit tougher to give power, all depending on how you use it. But you'll notice it's a lot easier for spin. That would be for the top spin. For down spin, same thing. However, now you're trying to almost like, not scoop it. I wouldn't say scoop, that's not a good term. But you do want to lift it up a little so that you can use that wrist again. Shakehanders, you drop your hand, you just let it go. Penhold, you have to pay a little more attention. You're going to bring it up like this. Hold on, let me take a ball so that you can really see that. With shakehanders, it would be here. I'm trying to hit it here. With backhand, you can even wait for the ball to bounce even a little closer to your body. Now you still want to hit it in front of you, but if you let it jump just a little closer to you, you might feel as if you have more control. You're going to let it come here, and you want to feel that the ball is really on your racket, and that's the first part. And then again, you're trying to flick that wrist, give spin, speed, energy, whatever it may be. So the only real difference, other than the fact that you're holding the racket differently, would be that wrist, because your body's the same. Nothing changes for the body. Anyone else?
Excellent.
No? All right, so we can go back to that shot we were talking about here. We talked about...
we have about 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Left. And then, so I'm just going to make a few announcements, and then Filip will conclude the session. First of all, thank you all for attending our first event, first MasterClass. It's free, absolutely free, as a member of the OTTC. It's just an ongoing weekly event so that you can continue to learn and improve your techniques in table tennis. We're lucky, Filip won't be available every Saturday, but we are having a high-level person every single Saturday. Number two, after Filip is done, you're more than welcome to practice the skills that he's taught. And during that time, we'll be preparing for our tournament. So if you have registered for the tournament, we've got your name down, great. If you'd like to participate, just meet us at one point at the desk and we'll take your name down. And then that's going to start probably just after 3 o'clock.
Sounds good. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks.
Last 5 minutes, we'll go over this one last shot, then I'll go over a few exercises you can use for every shot and how to improve them with or without many balls. Last shot we were talking about, if you bring it up like that, that's in a desperation situation. If the ball bounces back a little more, let it go. Let it go. Here we were talking about how you're just trying to bring it here. You're just trying to bring it above the net so that he's not in a position of advantage. Here you have a little more room, let it go. That doesn't mean you have to kill the ball. You're still trying to stay in control. Don't be as hesitant. You're basically trying to do this backhand spin motion here in a limited area, which means that your legs might not be set up how they're supposed to. Maybe your left leg's a little more in front than your right, which is okay, because you're over here now. We're on the side of the table. You're here. Just let it go. That's all it is. No matter what you do, if you let it go, it'll be okay. Now, a few exercises as to how you can improve a few of these skills I've just mentioned. The first one, this regular backhand shot, might be the most boring exercise. It's just constant repetition of this. What you can do is, and so you also keep your legs moving, jumping, what we were talking about, You can play backhand, 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 and then at one point someone can change to the middle. Sorry. Now what that does is it always keeps you guessing. You're trying to keep this motion here, but he comes here. But now all of a sudden the ball comes here. And that keeps you jumping. You have to come here, and you have to perform the same shot the same way in a different spot. Then you come back, backhand, backhand, backhand. Again, middle. What that's training you for is not only this motion, but it's going to keep you guessing as to when the ball's coming, improves your reaction time, and improves your leg movement. Now, this backhand topspin shot. What can you do to improve that? Someone's going to stay here and just block the ball back. Just like this topspin that we were talking about, but a lesser version. And you're going to try and give the ball as nice as possible to the other person there that's trying to do the topspin. And what you can do is just 1, 2, 3. And in fact, it's important to devote a lot of time to this. I went to China maybe a year and a half ago, and although they practice 6 to 8 hours a day, they spent a good 45 minutes just on this. Just on 1, 2, 3. Just only backhand topspin. Now, if you feel that you've kind of improved with that, and you want to take it a step further, what you can do is you can combine it with your forehand, which would mean backhand, right leg back, forehand, 1, 1. Now what that does is, well, I haven't really discussed forehand. You can do your forehand how you do your forehand. Sorry, most people's forehands are generally better than their backhands. What you're going for here is that transition from here, 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 here. Now these are really basic exercises, but the goal is to think about the technique here. I can give you a really complicated exercise where it's 2 to the backhand, 1 to the forehand, 1 to the middle, 2 to the forehand. There's no need for that right now. If you focus on these basic techniques while you're doing these exercises, it's a lot more effective than giving you some complicated exercise where you may or may not remember them, and then you sure as hell won't remember what to do. So, forehand, backhand, you can do this. When you feel comfortable, give it to the middle, and then play back. With this backhand topspin, just one spot, backhand topspin. When you feel comfortable, you can start to go 1 backhand, 1 forehand, so that you learn that transition, which comes automatically. No one needs to explain that to you. The more and more you're going back and forth, the better you get it. And last exercise for this flip. It's really as easy as having someone serve to you. And just practicing that over and over and over again. You can play the point after if you want. You can catch the ball and start again. And just do that flip. These are just suggestions. There are a bunch of other exercises that work too. Generally speaking, if you're using your backhand, you're improving it, as long as you're remembering these few pointers I gave to you. I want to thank you all for your time. I appreciate you coming up to the first master session. It means a lot to me and the club. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Philip. It's fantastic. Just stay here just a quick moment.
No problem.
So obviously, Philip has a lot to offer. He has a vast repertoire of exercises to improve your game, not just your backhand. He is going to be a coach at the OTTC. So he's going to be offering private and small group coaching, so 3-4 players. All members can go to their online member account and just look at his availability and book. He might fill up fast, and it's limited availability. Or with us. Yes, exactly. All right, so Filip will stick around. You can grab a table and practice your backhands. Filip will go around and talk to you guys a little bit. Okay.